What's going on, guys? Welcome back. And man, does it feel good to be talking about The Bad Batch again. Almost 2 years ago, it's kind of hard to believe it's been that long, I made a video on every 3 episodes of the first season of The Bad Batch. I didn't think I'd do that for Season 2, I thought I'd just do a mid-season and full-season review as I've been doing recently. But yet again, this show has just pulled me in immediately. We're only 3 episodes into this new season, and I'm already hooked. I can't wait to talk about these episodes with you guys, although unlike my previous reviews of this show, I won't be doing a brief plot synopsis for each episode. I'll just be talking about mostly what I liked, because I find it kind of difficult to dislike this show. Starting off with the 2-part premiere of this season, Spoils and Ruins of War, I thought these 2 episodes were a very fun reintroduction to the Bad Batch series. We get to see our cast of characters several months after the events of the first season, if I'm not mistaken, and right off the bat, the creative team shows us that they have listened to the criticisms of Season 1, because Echo and Tech, the 2 characters who many people, myself included, feel got the short end of the stick in regards to character development in the first season, already get much more character development in these first 2 episodes, which I think we all love to see. While Echo did have some moments of brilliance in the first season, particularly in the 10th and 14th episodes, his character has been largely neglected over the course of the series, which is why it was interesting to see him go through somewhat of a struggle here. Unlike the rest of the Bad Batch, he didn't have any modifications or enhancements until being experimented on by the Techno Union. He was a normal clone until the Separatists stripped away his humanity. But despite that, he still feels that the Bad Batch have a moral obligation to do everything in their power to help other people. And Omega feels the exact same way. She's constantly trying to convince the rest of the team to stick their necks out for other people, and Echo is shown several times as agreeing with her. But at the beginning of this season, we see that his desire to do good almost alienates him from Omega, the one person who typically sees eye to eye with him. He says something to Hunter in the first episode that Omega misinterprets as him not valuing her, which of course isn't the case. He tells her himself that without her, they might still be working for the Empire. She brought purpose to their lives in more ways than one, but with that comes its own set of complications. It was much appreciated to see the strengthening of their bond in these first 2 episodes. Likewise, Tech is a character who was extremely static in Season 1, which is in some ways intentional. He is incredibly smart by design, but that makes him an emotionally distant person, and I was waiting for the show to call him out for that. There's a moment in the 8th episode of Season 1 where Omega asks him what the war was really like, and he says it was a series of battles across various fronts. Rather than giving her an emotional or insightful response, he just speaks in technical jargon, which is what he's been programmed to do. They could have done something interesting in that scene, but it's mostly played up for comedic effect, and the plot just continues moving before they can do anything interesting with it. But in episode 2 of Season 2, we finally get the moment I was waiting for. Tech, Echo, and Omega take refuge with a man named Romar on the planet Sereno, who presents Tech with an archive of his people's history. Tech says a separatist archive, but Romar reminds him that it's a Serenian archive. Their people were around before the war began, and Tech simply says that he'd never thought of it that way before. And of course he wouldn't have. The clones were literally programmed to view anyone under the CIS regime as being an enemy, and I find that incredibly interesting. Tech is actually forced to think about his biases as a clone. Once he helps Romar repair his archive, Romar is ecstatic, nearly hugging Tech, saying, "You did it." And once again, Tech simply says, "Of course I did." He's still emotionally distant and cold. He doesn't realize how much this simple act has impacted this man. Romar repays that act of kindness by returning to help Tech in the end, ultimately saving Echo and Omega. Before Tech and the rest of the squad leave, he asks Romar what he's going to do now, and Romar reminds Tech that he's a survivor. They both are. The imagery of seeing this elderly man help Tech, a wounded veteran, stand was incredibly powerful. It reminds us that it doesn't matter what side we're on. We're all survivors, and at the end of the day, we're in this together. I've seen some people saying that Andor makes for an excellent companion piece to this show, and I'd have to agree with that assessment. In Andor, we see the people of Ferrix coming together to fight against the Empire that's trying to suppress their culture. Likewise, in this show, we see Romar, a man whose culture has already been suppressed by the Empire. He's one of who knows how many that are still left, and despite that, he still risks himself and goes out of his way in order to help Clone Force 99 in whatever ways he can. Now it's time to talk about the episode that everyone has been raving about, The Solitary Clone, which sees the return of not only the most interesting character in the show, but also our old pal Commander Cody. Oh boy, I have so much to say about this episode. I'm not even sure I'll be able to condense it into this video, but it was absolutely fantastic. I do think people are exaggerating slightly when they say it's the best episode of the series, but it's definitely up there. This is top-tier Star Wars content. When I saw that Commander Cody was going to be making his return this season, I was very excited, and not just because, look, cameo, but because Cody offers some very specific storytelling potential for this show, and let's just say, they certainly didn't squander that potential. Cody is in a far different position than any other clone we've seen in this story. Clone Force 99 and Rex are very obviously opposed to the Empire, while Crosshair is fully committed to it. But Cody's somewhere in the middle. He isn't sure of what he thinks about the Empire. As far as we know, he was the first clone who executed Order 66, and you can tell that's weighing on his conscience. Seeing him and Crosshair juxtaposed as they go on this mission was very compelling. In a way, their dynamic reflects that of Windu and Dooku from Tales of the Jedi. One character blindly follows the corrupt system they serve under, while the other is beginning to question its methods. In Tales of the Jedi, Mace Windu blindly follows the dogmatic Jedi code and claims that everything should be done by the book, while Dooku desires to uncover the truth and make a change. In The Bad Batch, Cody attempts to de-escalate the situation and bring peace, which is what the Empire claims it's doing, while Crosshair follows orders and does what needs to be done. And I didn't find their mission fun to watch either. Don't get me wrong, there were exciting moments, like Crosshair shooting down the barrel of an AAT or pulling off the ultimate trick shot which disables the tactical droid. It was a well-done action scene that made sense. There was real strategy to it, unlike the meaningless noise in something like the Book of Boba Fett. But I found it quite harrowing to see these clones march to their deaths to accomplish a meaningless goal. The entirety of Cody's squad was wiped out, with an exception of him and Crosshair. And for what? Just yet another planet for the Empire to occupy? And once again, as per usual with the animated Star Wars shows, it takes full advantage of visual storytelling. The animation and score carry scenes without any dialogue needed. The ending of the third episode was beautifully handled, as Cody hesitates to board his transport, turning around to see a shuttle of TK troopers, aka prototype stormtroopers, land, as the new Governor Groton gives Cody a contemptuous look over his shoulder. That moment tells you all you need to know. The system that Cody swore loyalty to is completely gone. He no longer recognizes it. The time of the clones is truly at an end, and they didn't need to tell you that. They could have easily had some clone in the background go, "Wow, I guess our time really has come to an end," or something like that. But they know the audience is smart enough to interpret what's happening. Everything is communicated to you visually. I hate to bring everything back to the crappy Obi-Wan Kenobi show, but the opening scene of that series shows us Order 66 and ends with an audio clip of Palpatine saying "Execute Order 66" looped 3 times, just in case you didn't realize what was going on in that scene. Because, the creative team on that show thinks that us, the audience, are a bunch of brain-dead idiots. I don't think they'll be able to help themselves, but I think it would be very interesting if that's the last time we ever see Commander Cody, realizing that the system he dedicated his life to no longer values him and that it has become something twisted, evil, and corrupt. At the end of the episode, Crosshair learns that Cody went AWOL, and that's all we know. Once again, it's highly likely he'll make an appearance later on down the line, but if they choose to leave Cody's story like that, I'll respect them immensely, because it contributes a great deal to Crosshair's story, who remains the most interesting character in this entire show. As you may have guessed, the Solitary Clone is a title in reference to Crosshair, a character who, despite being extremely messed up and evil, remains strangely sympathetic and relatable. This episode is bookended with him going about his everyday life, waking up, hanging out in the cafeteria, being called to Vice Admiral Rampart's office. But we see that he's in a tortured mental state. He's rejected by the other clones. Even Rampart himself asks Crosshair why he bothered to come back after the Empire took almost a month to recover him from Kamino, and he simply says that he's a soldier of the Empire. He remains loyal to them for no other reason than he feels it gives him a purpose in life. And that's an interesting metaphor. Strict adherence to a specific schedule or routine rarely, if ever, brings us true peace and happiness. We usually just do that to distract ourselves from the fact that life isn't a straight line. I know some people in real life who some might consider to be workaholics, but despite that, they still show an immense amount of compassion and empathy for other people. Crosshair, by his nature, is incapable of doing that. The Empire doesn't care about its soldiers, we already know that. But Commander Cody does. This is shown to us by him calling his squad by their names rather than numbers. We know that Crosshair does care deep down. He's capable of empathy. He rescued Omega at the end of the previous season, and his gesture of inviting the rest of Clone Force 99 into the Empire was evil, but in his own way, he was trying to show the rest of his brothers that he cares. Crosshair is, deep down, a caring individual despite how damaged he is, but he's afraid. In Andor, Nemik tells us that oppression is the mask of fear, and that idea has been carried over seamlessly into the Bad Batch. Vice Admiral Rampart executes Captain Wilco out of fear that he'll face consequences for his failures. Likewise, Crosshair is afraid of losing his purpose. You can tell that remaining subservient to the Empire is taking a toll on him, but he doesn't know what he'd do Without it, the Empire runs on people who can't think outside the box. But this show is about characters who do think outside the box. The Bad Batch, as Commander Cody says, are different by design. They've found a purpose that's different from Crosshair's. Their purpose is to care for each other and help other people. Sid asks Hunter in the first episode if they ever want to be free, and Hunter replies, "We're already free." They've chosen freedom. Crosshair, on the other hand, has chosen to be a slave to an empire that he full well knows despises him. Cody tells us at the end of the third episode that the clones are capable of making their own decisions. They make their choices, and they have to live with them too. As Crosshair said at the end of Season 1, he made his decision to stay loyal to the Empire. And now he has to live with that. He's severed all emotional connections with other people, and now he's alone, trapped within a cycle of his own making. Whether or not he'll choose to break that cycle remains to be seen. I legitimately don't know what to think of Dave Filoni at this point. As you guys know, I have my problems with the guy, but when he sticks to what he's good at, he knocks it out of the park. All of his animated Star Wars series have been good to great, but the second he steps into live action, everything goes to shit, and I don't know what to attribute that to. Him not caring, or some sort of interference from either the studio or Jon Favreau and the countless other directors involved in The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, and the upcoming Ahsoka series. Either way, it's such a shame that so many people are unwilling to give The Bad Batch a try, because the storytelling in this show is so deep and meaningful. It really is Star Wars at its finest, in my opinion. But people give it a pass because it's animated, I guess, despite the fact that animation offers far less restrictions than live-action filmmaking, which should be fairly obvious at this point considering that all the live-action Star Wars shows have been complete crap, with an exception of Andor. I've seen so many people saying that they wish shows like Obi-Wan Kenobi that feature more well-known characters had the same writing quality as Andor, and I'm just over here going, you guys do know that already exists, right? But I guess that's just the way of the world. People go on consuming the garbage that is Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Book of Boba Fett, while brilliant stories like the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch fall by the wayside. But that's about all I have to say about the first 3 episodes of The Bad Batch Season 2. This show is continuing to blow me away, and I can't wait to see where the story goes next. But you guys let me know, what are your thoughts on the first 3 episodes of The Bad Batch Season 2? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Just whatever your thoughts are, please let me know them all in the comments below. And of course, as always, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.